That's good. All right. So hello, everybody. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. And I'm Jinhua Zhao, Associate Professor at DUSP at MIT. Really thank you for joining us, everybody. And we have from MIT side, Sandy Welford, Professor Larry Susskind, Professor Gabriella Carolina, and Professor Joe Ferreira. If I miss anyone else, please let me know. Please just yell. So several things before we start. The first one is our norm is video on and audio off, right? Video on and audio off, right? As much as you can, please turn on your video so we can see each other, just a much better conversation, right? As much as you can, maybe you have other reasons, of course, that will totally respect your choice on this. That's the first thing. The second thing is just to warm up the audience here. Please, everyone, type in the chat your city and your current time zone, right? What time, local time, right? So for me, I say I'm Cambridge. Now it's 3 p.m. Can everybody type so we get a sense of where people are from?
Jinhua, we also want to alert everyone that we are recording this session so that it can be shared on our website. So if you,
indeed, yeah.
If you don't like that idea, then perhaps you can close your video, but we hope that you will be okay with that.
Right. So there's a Lima, Peru, Buffalo, Singapore. What time Singapore now is? 3 a.m. Wow, thank you for joining us. So 4 a.m. This morning at 4, I actually 4 a.m. this morning I give a talk to Singapore, so we are exchanging the courtesy to each other, right? Go to Watertown. So, oh, thank you. That's lovely. Yeah. All right. So that's question one. Question two. Can you type your undergraduate university and your major? Undergraduate degree major. So I would say Tongji University, city planning. So architecture, McGill, economics, Mount Holocaust, Purdue, urban regional planning, environmental engineering, Mumbai, Melbourne, UBC, MIT ECS, IIT. Great, cool, yeah, thank you. Please, everybody, continue typing in. A third question, right? This is, if you do come to MIT, give us 3 keywords that describe your interest of as a PhD student at MIT. What do you want to do? 3 keywords to describe your interest. In whatever way you define, could be a methodology, could be a region, could be a topic, could be a principle. Anyway, you identify yourself. 3 keywords describe your scholarship. None of these are input into the admission process, right? It's totally just for to know each other better, right? So land use, urban economics, inequality, disaster risk resilience, environmental planning, climate change, urban politics, environmental social justice, remote sensing, hazard, disability, gender, urban analytics. Right. Yeah, please, I really hope everyone can participate, and then we can get we'll compile this to get a collective sense of the interest from the PhD student, right? Gender, urbanism, public space, faculty members, food and climate resilience, South American education, heritage, public space, future of historical cities, technology and urban system, urban data science, transparency, policy, international development, resilience. Great, thank you. This is very helpful. Yeah, hopefully everyone also kind of appreciating this list here, right? All right, thanks everybody for joining. So now let me first introduce Professor Gabriella Carolina to give a short remarks.
Hi everyone, and welcome to our open house. I'm very excited to join you today, and I'm excited that you're interested in our program. Our program probably has the largest faculty of all planning programs, at least that I know of in the world. We are one group of folks who are interested in moving the city from that which is to that which ought to be, very much focused on issues of equity. and translating that interest in equity across several sectors of actual planning work, whether we're talking about planning work at the community level, at the city level, or at the national scale, or internationally, of course. How much do I have, Jinhua, in terms of time? So
total 2 minutes.
Okay, 2 minutes. Okay. Our departmental priorities are focused on issues of racial justice, of the climate, of addressing the climate crisis, of democratic governance, and addressing the wealth gap, both across nations, within communities, again, across regions. And we're really focused on trying to understand and push out the boundaries of the knowledge frontier across all of those realms. So what does it mean to be a planner at the doctoral level? We are interested in preparing you both to engage with the academic community, but also to engage with practitioners and to shape practice. We are interested in pedagogy. We are interested in substantive fields of knowledge. And we put a lot of effort into ensuring that our students are properly trained to address questions that are not only facing us today, but that which you'll face 20, 30 years down the line. So how do you become a leader in your fields? What is the nature of training that will prepare you for a very much evolving universe of what it means to be a planner? I will stop with that for now, Jinhua.
Thank you, Gabriella. Professor Larry Susskind.
Hello, everybody. I'm a longtime member of the Department of Urban Studies and Planning, and I've had a lot of doctoral advisees over 5 decades. And I would tell you this, DUSP is a place where students need to know what they want to learn or need to be able to figure it out on their feet. We don't have a fixed program where you're told what to do, what to study, what to read, what to write. We are looking for students who are self-starters, who can bring questions and then know how to engage their fellow students, because as co-learners, there's as much, if not more, to be learned from the other students in the program as from faculty. There's no specific subject you can't find a way to study, but they all has to fit together in some way, and that's what the faculty can help you do. My own area of work is in the environment field, but the definition of what that is has expanded and changed rapidly over the decades. We began focusing on land use and pollution questions, but now we're primarily interested in environmental justice issues, climate adaptation, renewable energy, water diplomacy, a whole lot of things that have emerged and evolved. And in fact, coming to study environment means you'll be studying development. It means you'll be studying technology. It means you'll be looking at a lot of different methods, because the topics don't segregate themselves at all. The milestones in the department, maybe Sandy's going to talk a little bit about those. In the first year, you've got to write a research paper and show that you can organize to get that done. Then you've got to pick a first field of study that's typically close to a discipline, and a second field of study that's typically focused on a question or a problem that relates to applying that discipline. And then you have to write a dissertation proposal, write the dissertation, and defend it. There's milestones, but how you move through that is between you and the faculty that you choose to work with. So I'm looking forward to your questions during this session, and even follow-up. If we don't get all your questions asked today, I'm glad to have people email me directly.
Thank you, Larry. Professor Joseph Ferreira.
Hi, good to see everyone here. I'm Joe Ferreira. I'm like Larry, been at MIT for quite a while. My own interests focus on urban analytics and urban information systems. And in addition to what's already been said, I would add that MIT is a particularly good place to be at this time when information technology and computing is sort of impacting so many aspects of society. And MIT has one of the larger, well-known urban studies and planning programs, that you've got sort of one of the premier places that are dealing with the technology, as well as the departments that sort of focused on urban planning. So you get both sides. Now, as Larry said, you need to be able to construct your own program. Nobody's going to tell you what to do, and it can be frustrating sometimes to have so many different perspectives on what works and what doesn't work. But it's particularly timely in that we've seen over the last couple of years with everything from socioeconomic disruption, questions about social inequality, and a sort of beginning to question whether or not all the technology over the last couple of decades has been totally beneficial. There are a lot of questions that need answering that require a sort of interdisciplinary perspective. One person's not going to be able to capture all that's needed to understand sort of where we're headed and what we can do about it. But MIT is a very interesting place where you can get all worlds at a high level commenting on what you're trying to do. If you can navigate that kind of setting, then we're a very interesting place in which to undertake a career path that involves research that's looking seriously at what's happening to urban and metropolitan areas. How are we forming communities? How's that being changed? What are the responsibilities of society to deal with these enormous problems that we have now, ranging from climate to social inequity? Okay, so look forward to any questions that you might have and to the discussion.
Great, thank you, Larry. So Sandy Welford, our academic administrator here, and actually the person we'll work most closely with while walking through the MIT process here. Sandy, please. Oh, you're on mute.
Just got the mute sign. Maybe that's better. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Sandy Welford, academic advisor for PhD students in the department. I primarily help students interpret their degree requirements, navigate the MIT bureaucracy, and I'm the all-around problem solver. I do my best to provide a space for students that can come and speak to me just about anything that's confidential. I do my best to help students and make sure that they finish their degree in the time intended.
Great, yeah. Thank you, Sandy. So myself is, I do two things. One is transportation planning. The other one is the behavioral science. So in my own research, I try to bring the behavioral thinking and computational thinking together to shape people's behavior, to design mobility system, and also reform transportation policy. And Gabriella and I, we are co-chairing the DUSP PhD committee, right? So now what I want to do is let everybody take 20 seconds to type your question into the chat. I'd like everybody to type at least one question. Give me a here, you must have some questions. I don't want the 2 or 3 people dominating the whole process. I'd like everybody to have some question to ask. We'll see what's in the chat. Meanwhile, Gabriella, we have some kind of structured remarks we'll let you know. But let's now take 20 minutes. Everybody type your question into the chat.
Jinhua, you don't mean 20 minutes, correct?
Oh, sorry, 20 seconds. Right. I'm sorry.
Jinhua, do you think it might be useful to just give people a little bit of a sense of the timeline and the process by which we make decisions about admission?
Yeah, we have a set of remarks that we prepared, right? But I want people to have the 20-second uninterrupted, think about a question and type it out. I'm licensing everybody to ask questions here. Funding and time commitment. On construction on paragraph, a program that passed, wonder what the strategies, disciplinary group, contact one faculty member before submitting, What state would need to pick an advisor? Any degree requirement? Nice, yeah, please go ahead, right? Gabriella, Larry, Joe, Sandy, look through the whole thing, pick the one that you like to address. So later we'll pass to you guys to that, right? Again, everybody please type your questions. So Gabriella and I, we prepare some like a structured remark. Maybe let's put it into two parts. There's the decision-making process, there's the financial model, and then there's the core criteria and guideline for our decision, right? So maybe I will take the core criteria part that Gabrielle already structured, so I will just read it out. And then Gabrielle will describe the decision process and the financial model, right? So in terms of the criteria, we list the 5 things here, right? The first one is application strengths. It's the excellence, right? The coherence of the statement, compelling research topics, preparedness for the doctoral level work. The second one is the departmental research priorities that Gabrielle already mentioned at the very beginning, the racial justice, climate change, democratic governance, and the wealth gap. The third criteria is the advisor advising a committee match, right? Meaning, can an applicant work with a few DUSP faculty on their committee, right? Do we at DUSP have the resources, the right intellectual resource to support you on your endeavor? Fourth is the instructorship map. For that later, Gabrielle will talk, will provide you the financial support, but does come with a duty. One part of the duty is being the instructor and the TAs for several of these core DUSP classes, right? So we want to make sure that candidates have the capacity to teach those classes. And the last one is on the cross-cutting substantive areas. So research of interest to multiple DUSP groups so that can bring the interdisciplinary multiple thinking together. So those are the 5 things in terms of the criteria. Later, Gabrielle, probably we can type into the chat so people have a formal written document.
We will be putting it up on our website.
On the website, right? Sounds good. Yeah. So now I pass to Gabrielle to talk about the decision-making process and the financial model.
Sure. I'll start with the financial model because I want to assure folks that if they do matriculate here, that they know that they are financially supported. So we have moved to what is essentially a 5-year model of financial support for doctoral students. So what that means is that for 4 full years and for 9 months, building up to the point at which you graduate, you are fully funded as a doctoral student, inclusive of summers. So what does that look like in practice? One should note that you're not thinking about tuition, you're not thinking about stipends because that is taken care of for you. You're not thinking about health insurance because that is also part of the offering. But that also, of course, comes with work requirements, which include 3 research assistantships and 5 teaching assistantships during the fall and spring terms, as well as work requirements for the 4 summers during which one has the option of DUSP funding. One of those summers we call a fellowship summer to enable doctoral students to complete their field work wherever they wish to be doing it. But we've worked really hard over the past number of years to get to a point where we feel that our students can be fully financially secure and really pay attention and concentrate on their actual research. In terms of the decision-making process, what happens when you submit your application? Right? You're done, you did all your work, now what? Essentially, we will not be reading anything until January, when all of the applications have come in. And you'll note that on the application, typically one has to indicate groups with which they have affinities. So program groups, there are program groups within DUSP, including the Housing Community Economic Development Group, the Environmental Planning and Policy Group, the Urban Information Science Group, the City Design Group, and the International Development Group. Those are our 5 main programmatic or substantive areas by which the faculty have traditionally organized ourselves. And it is also the process by which we organize admissions, meaning that when you tick a box that says, I am interested in environmental planning and policy and international development, you will likely have folks like Larry Suskind and myself and Jinhua reading that. If you tick UIS and international development, you will likely have Joe and Jinhua reading your application. So it is really a collective exercise. And I want to also emphasize that it is really during the admissions process where those groups have a little bit more prominence, because once you enter, what we find is, of course, that students have affinities with a number of faculty members across the board. So you are not necessarily married to only working with me in international development, because I myself am also involved in work within environmental planning and policy with Larry, for example. So there's a lot of cross-disciplinary, if you will, or cross-substantive areas, which reflects the realities on the ground. But in terms of your application, that is the way we have rationalized how to read your work. So it is important that you think about what is your primary group through which, who are the folks that you want to be reading your application. In terms of other decision-making or processes that happen, perhaps a little bit even before you submit, I want to highlight that there is a pass system in particular. And actually, I would invite Sandy, if you will, to speak a bit about the pass system, which provides folks with student level support for putting together the application. Because I think that's important in terms of how to put your application together and what happens to it afterwards. I'll finish a little bit on what happens afterwards by saying that the groups, of course, will rank the applicants according to the criteria that Jinhua already shared. We have 5 explicit presidential fellowships, what we call full presidential fellowships within our department that go across all the groups. So it's a very competitive process, as you know, and to the extent possible, when we have faculty funded research doctoral positions, we are able to bring in candidates who work specifically on a faculty research project in addition to the 5 presidential fellowships, but all of our doctoral candidates are supported in the same financial model, i.e. by the same amount of time, according to the model that we have recently set up. Thank you, Jinhua, for sharing the pass system.
Thank you, Gabriella. So here, there's a group of questions there, right? So Larry, Joe, and Sandy, Gabriella, maybe each of you pick maybe 2 questions, and any 2 you pick and try to give a short answer to that. So I'll ask Larry to start. But before that, I noticed Professor Emmy Lee also just joined us. So Emmy, do you want to give a 1-minute introduction of yourself?
I just came off of a panel of C3E, which is an organization of women in clean energy. And it was an amazing experience. And that's just one of the things that you have an opportunity to experience at MIT. So there's just a volume of things to do. I'm a professor of economic geography and regional planning. I work in low-income communities, and I also have an expertise in energy. And welcome.
Great, thank you, Emmy. So here, let me just project this. That's what the system that Gabriella just mentioned. There's a peer application support service. If you go to the URL I just put in the chat, you can find this system, right? Okay, that's all from me. Larry, any 2 questions you want to address?
There are a couple of questions I think we could answer quickly.
Nice.
I don't know the exact stipend, but I'm sure Sandy does. About when you say there's a stipend, what is the monthly stipend that MIT provides this year?
It's oh, you would have to ask me that.
Sorry, when you have it, you can come butt back in, okay?
Okay, thanks.
We mostly admit students with a prior master's degree. We have on occasion taking someone straight from a bachelor's degree, but it's not the norm. It's much more likely someone has a prior master's degree. Students who have graduated, I would say a substantial portion of them are looking for academic careers. People with PhD are looking for academic careers somewhere in the world. But there is likely to go for a period of time into some kind of applied work, whether in government or non-governmental sectors. Not that many go into the private sector, but they certainly move back and forth in their careers between working in consulting, working in a not-for-profit, working in a multilateral, and then teaching somewhere. So that there's an academic orientation to where graduates go. I'm looking at the question that asks about that, but that doesn't mean people don't equally look to move into the world of applied social sciences or of action, working for a not-for-profit in an action-oriented role. We certainly have alumni doing those kinds of things. I do not suggest writing to someone on the faculty, sending your CV and saying, would you be my advisor if I get admitted? Because the process really works the opposite way, as you heard. There's a review process. You put your best case in, the appropriate faculty, many of them will look at these applications and then make some choice about people they think are qualified and high on the list. And then there'll be a decision made by the department about which faculty member matches really well with the person who's admitted. So writing ahead of time to faculty you probably won't get an answer. I realize I get at least one a week of such letters saying, do you have room in your lab? Would you admit me to the PhD program? This place doesn't work that way. We also, I'll just say one more thing. There are other planning schools that ask you to say what you think your dissertation is going to be about, and you put that in with your application. I'm just speaking for myself now. I don't really care, because if you still wanted to write the same thing when it came time to pick a dissertation topic that you had before you came, I feel like we would have failed. So I want to know what your interests are, but do not have to write a proposal for your dissertation topic or have a clue as to what it is in order to be admitted.
Thanks
Can
a lot.
I say
Gabriella, go
something?
ahead.
Can I just say something? So
Yes.
what Larry's saying, we don't need to see your question, hypotheses, variables, et cetera, et cetera. We want to explain to us why we should care about what you care about, right? Make that case. And so it's not the specificity of the way you present it from a methodological standpoint, but it's really making the case for why we should care and why you are well positioned to do the work that you think is important and why we are well positioned to support you in doing that. So that was just the only clarification.
Great.
I hope that matches what you were saying.
Thanks, Gabriella. Joe, do you want to pick a few questions and answer?
Yeah, I was going to comment on some of the same things, but the other thing, there are some about cross group and cross MIT, and that varies a lot from one university to another. At MIT, in our department, you aren't all siloed in a group that you're associated with when you come in. So many of our students end up working with faculty who are primarily affiliated with one or more groups. And you'll see a lot of the faculty are involved in more than one group and involved in research projects across MIT, not just within the department. And unlike some other, especially some of the bigger universities, the schools aren't all that isolated. It's very easy to do collaborative research across campus. It's very easy to take courses in other departments across campus. So it really is the case that you can tap computer science classes, same as the computer science PhDs, if you're ready for that, if that's what you need for your particular program. And we've had a number of people who get joint degrees, whether it's an engineering department or Sloan. So it is a place where you aren't strapped by disciplinary boundaries or departmental boundaries in what you can do. Now, that also complements some of the other things that have been said about you're going to have to construct what it is you do, because otherwise you're somebody in a candy store and you can get sick from the candy without it adding up to your career. But there are a lot of opportunities that way. Also, it's we provide support for the people who come, but we can't admit anywhere near as many people as we feel are qualified to be here. So it's a selective process, and it's very much idiosyncratic. It's hard to generalize with these things about exactly what you have to write in the application. But I agree with what Gabrielle said, that it isn't, here's my PhD dissertation. Do you want me to come here and work in your lab? Rather, it's more, here are the questions I'm interested in. Here's why I'm prepared to do meaningful research in that area. Here's the ways in which you think that can be well supported by being at MIT because of what's going on here. And that's what the committee looks for. That's what you should be thinking about in choosing where you want to go and why.
Thank you, Joe. Sandy, Emmy, Gabriella, if you see any questions you want to address, feel free to just jump in.
I'd like to just talk for a moment. Or Sandy, go ahead.
Well, that's okay. I was just going to comment and say I've been busy sending off the Zoom link to last minute people.
Oh, yeah, please. Thank you.
In the
Yeah.
background.
All right. Gabriella, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just, Tiffany brings the question of what are some considerations for choosing which group. So one of the things that I think is a good way to get around the fact that you have to essentially have a group read your application is that you can also speak along the lines of what we were just saying in terms of what is the ecosystem at MIT that you think is ready to support you in your journey. You can mention the different faculty and the different groups in your statement, even if essentially one group is reading your application because you tick that box. So in other words, you don't have to feel like people won't get to read your application if you only tick international development, that Larry wouldn't get to read your statement. In fact, we make an explicit effort to ensure that faculty who would be interested in a candidate do get to read that candidate. So it's really helpful when you flag it in your own statements.
Thanks, Gabriella. Emmy?
Yeah, I'd like to answer the question about public policy. Can you expand on the applicability of the research done in DUSP? Professor Carolini mentioned the engagement with policymakers, so I am curious, how does the engagement work? The first thing to say is that several of us have been policymakers or are policymakers now. I happen to be a local official in my town. In addition, a lot of us actually we are specifically selected because of our backgrounds and the policy topics that we are capable of answering. So right now I have a project on catastrophic failure in the utility sector, and it's a gigantic policy problem that will have applicability to many states around the country. So it's partly the result of our connections, it's partly a result of our interests, it's partly a result of our reputations, and it's partly the result of collaborations that we organize with one another.
Thanks, Emmy.
I'd like
Sunny.
to comment on the stipend. It's $3,488. And I also wanted to answer.
Per which period, Sandy?
I'm
Explain.
sorry. Well, it's this current.
A month.
A month, yeah.
Month, sorry, and it's this current, and it will probably go up for students coming in and being admitted in the fall. I'd also like to comment on the travel funds. There's a question. Students do have a travel fund. We do have a travel fund for students who are going to present a paper at an organization or planning organization or traveling to a planning conference. But I don't know of any funds for students doing dissertation work outside of the country.
There are also some straightforward question. Is there an age limit? There's no.
No age limit.
There are other people said you finished your undergrad degree a couple of years ago, you're applying, that's totally fine, right?
Yes.
The work experience is often valued very much. It's not a concern at all.
Yes, that's correct.
I do want to say that there are funds that are, to speak to Sandy, the point about international travel, MIT is rather fortunate to have several different resources that our students have very often successfully tapped into to support their international fieldwork. So it has never been a problem that I've found any one of the students that I've known in the past decade to face.
Right. What type of international professions do graduates tend to enter? Many of people go to the international NGOs. For that, Gabriella may have more to add, but there's a variety of destination and career paths there.
Yeah, we have found that about half of half of our cohorts end up in academia and half end up in various professional positions across multilaterals, across national level organizations within the public sector, as Larry mentioned earlier, sometimes also in the private sector in entrepreneurial ways. So there's really the sky is not a limit.
The most recent question is about in residence. And let me just suggest, although Sandy can tell you the official rules, most people need to be in residence until they finish their general exams and are ready to put a dissertation proposal forward and present that to their faculty committee. And when the dissertation proposal is approved and research is necessary, field research or off-campus research, then we have something called non-resident status. But we would expect people to be full-time, not part-time students and doing something else until they finish their general exams, which is 2 to 3 years for most people. Is that fair, Sandy?
Yeah, non-resident status, I always thought was a bad way of putting it, because it makes students feel as though that they, the non-resident part means that they are withdrawn from school, which is not so. A non-resident status, you pay a small amount of the tuition. It enables you to be a full-time student, whether you're an international or domestic, and you are able to leave campus and go about doing your field research wherever in the world it takes you. We have another status as well called thesis in absentia, which we are now using as well, since the Institute had required all students to be on campus this starting in the fall. It allows dissertation writers to, in this status, to be away from campus for the term to do their dissertation research. However, they are considered full-time students as well, but they pay full tuition.
Right. Gabriella just typed in one additional open house organized by our PhD students. I think one of the candidates asking that question, so that's the info in it.
Yeah, you'll find the Zoom link, password, and all in the poster that I have attached in the chat, but that will be on November 12th at 11 a.m. Boston time.
And Olenka asked, is there available any short information about the professors' research and their interest? So I just type in the link. That's where you can find all the faculties, right? All of them have a designated web page in the DUSP website. Many of them may have additional website that gives more details on that. I think you typically, if you Google the professor name plus MIT, you'll find those website, right? But the link I give you is a good place to start.
There's also an active web page within our website that lists the different projects that are ongoing across faculty.
Yeah, Sandy?
Yeah, I also wanted, I haven't seen this question, but I also wanted to let folks know that we do provide desk space for students when they're admitted. And also, we also ask students to be on the PhD as representatives of the PhD committee as well, to talk about the different degree requirements and so forth that may come up in the committee. Let's see, there was something else, but it'll come to me.
So there's another question. Bianchi asked, at what point do we choose a doctoral advisor? Is there an opportunity at the start of the PhD to work with different professors to better understand work styles, the research area? That's a good question. So during the admission, once you're admitted, we'll assign you one as the starting point, right? That's based on our judgment of who will best fit into that. But then with that being said, after you come to MIT, you have a lot of opportunities to talk to many professors and the potential switch to a different advisor, right? For that, I think we have quite a period of time for you to prepare for that. We have the first year to take classes, the next year do the general exam, then you form a committee, do the curriculum. So all this process, that's where you gradually build up this understanding. And the advisee, we really want you to kind of be proactive in this, right? So here, hopefully the one you assigned with at the beginning is the one you really like, enjoy and match. But if that's not the case, again, talk to many other professors and you can switch, right? There are quite a bit of flexibility in this process.
Along the same lines, I think it's important to note that students pick dissertation topics that they want to do and then find faculty willing to work with them on those topics. Even though someone may be affiliated with a group or even a lab, it doesn't mean your dissertation topic is going to be assigned by a faculty member. Students have autonomy. They choose the dissertation topic they want to do. They may have to convince someone on the faculty to serve as a member of their PhD committee and that they can do that work, and there'll be some dialogue about it, but nobody's handed a dissertation topic because they were affiliated with a research group or a lab. That isn't the model in our department.
Right. So here, we try to answer many questions, but if you think your question was missed, please type it again in the end. So we'll try to recapture that. Yeah, Sandy, go ahead.
Also, I wanted to add that with it, when students are doing their generals, it's a faculty chair and 2 readers. So there's an opportunity to work with faculty there. We also have availability of independent study work where students can do an independent study topic with another faculty member other than their advisor. So that's another opportunity to work with another faculty member. Also, as Larry pointed out, the dissertation committee. Also, students have an opportunity to cross-register at Harvard as well, so that they can take classes at Harvard on the cross-registration policy.
Emmy?
There's a question, DUSP does transformational work around the world. How does the school understand its relationship to the communities in and beyond its immediate environs? So when you say school at MIT, that constitutes a whole group of different departments. So I'm presuming that this question actually means DUSP and not the school as a whole. So that's how I'm going to respond to it. So my reaction is that all of us, I think we're very similar in certain ways as faculty in that we're extremely mindful of the consequences of our actions when we leave campus and when we get involved in communities and when we get asked to provide advice. And we reflect a lot and work to the best of our ability not to push people out of our way to get our answer on the stage, but rather work collaboratively with communities at every level. And we're mindful of the fact that we have an effect and that we have to be conscious of the consequences of our actions. So I would say that we are not helicopter-oriented scholars. If we're going to work in a location, we embed ourselves and we ask the people we're working with to help us understand their situation rather than laying our own particular perspective on them and assuming they're going to absorb it.
Thanks, Emmy.
The
go ahead, Laura.
No, I'm just looking at the most recent question. I think there's a misunderstanding. What Gabriella described as there's a big pool of people that apply, there's a small number that's admitted. Everyone admitted is only admitted when we have full financial aid for them and they're covered for up to 5 years. And the fact that you're a US citizen or not a US citizen has nothing to do with whether you are admitted and whether you are one of the people who gets that financial aid package with the work responsibilities that Gabriella described. So yes, it's true, MIT as a school may have some money for international students at the undergraduate level, but MIT general scholarship funds really at this point have nothing to do with students who are admitted to our PhD program. The department has the resources now to fund all of them for the entire time that they're present.
Yes, and in addition, I just wanted to say my comment after Sandy's comment about international scholarships was more in terms of the substantive areas of research that you might engage. So if you're doing work internationally, then there is funding to support that work internationally, regardless of where you come from.
Emmy?
This is a question about what do people do after they graduate? Did anybody answer that one already? Okay, well, I'll try.
We did answer that one.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
There's one more question. Aberrain talk about, is it possible two students to undertake joint research? You can clearly collaborate, but you have to write, each of you write an independent dissertation.
I mean, if you're talking about research pre-dissertation,
Yeah.
teams of students work with teams of faculty all the time and co-author things.
Yeah.
But dissertation has to be individual work that can be judged separately.
Yeah. Again, if you see your question not answered, please type again down the chat so we notice them.
So
There's
take a crack at that last question that Tiffany just put down there.
yeah. I was just going to suggest that probably the student-led session will be the best way to get that question answered, Tiffany, but in general, there's very much a culture of partnership here, of mutual respect. We recognize the tremendous talents that our students bring to the table. We leverage those talents and we build on those talents. So if there is a general culture, it is one of humanity, respect, and innovation. There's a lot of excitement. MIT is full of excitement. I will say, coming from other institutions, that what I was personally struck by was the amount of energy. As I think Joe mentioned, the candy store, it really does feel like a candy store. Right? And there are many directions that you can go in.
Right, yeah. On that, Lara, we often use this, there are two dimensions you can define a cohort, right? The same year coming in 2022, even though you work on different topics, you're one cohort because you share the same kind of timeline, right? Another vertical one is the one across different years, but share similar interests. That is these two you can consider, let alone there are many other dimensions along which you can gather on this. One thing I just say that, just to be realistic here, right? Anywhere when you have a group of people, there are places sometimes people complain, right? I mean, there's something wrong here, something wrong there. But let me report to you what people said after they left DUSP. They went to somewhere else. I think almost uniformly they will say how nice DUSP was while I was there, even though I was complaining at the time, right? And like everyone and every organization also happens to this. Last question there. Another, I mean, it is not the end, right? I'm just saying the last thing. Is it possible to apply for both master and PhD? Right, only separately. You should apply to both. You just submit.
Oh.
Yeah, I guess, right? That's how.
No.
Yeah, it's not, you know, in some of the other disciplines, like in the sciences, you might have the case where you're applying to a doctoral program and getting a master's degree along the way. That is not the case here. You know, the master's program in planning is a terminal degree, i.e. you can take that degree and go and practice. Most of the folks, as Larry mentioned, do apply with already a master's degree in hand.
Right. Yeah. Well, I myself, example, after my undergraduate applied to PhD at DUSP, DUSP told me that, oh, Jinhua, we like you, but you are not ready for a PhD. Go do an MCP. That's what I did.
Yeah, but we don't want to leave anyone with the impression that if they want the PhD, they should apply to the master's and the doctoral program. That is not the case.
No.
Okay, MCP is if you want to get a professional planning degree, you apply for that. If you want to get a PhD, typically you have a prior master's degree and you're applying for the PhD.
Right. Other questions? Let's see.
Yeah.
I think we missed a few. There must be some other ones, right?
And there are required classes in the first year, and there are requirements in terms of methodologies that doctoral students have to complete. But the specifics of which class to meet the methodology requirement is, of course, the choice of the doctoral student. We do have an approved list of classes to that end, and we do have required courses within the first year.
Ricky asked a question, can you describe collaboration with other departments, i.e. building skills that support your research from other disciplines? I think Joe hinted at this, right? First of all, MIT is a small university, relatively speaking. Small has this very important advantage that people mingle much easily, right? The notion of a school or department is not as dividing as it seems in many other universities. So here in terms of collaboration, there's kind of a very formal ones, right? Say, for example, many of our faculty are on a bunch of other initiatives at MIT. We call this like interdisciplinary programs, etc. Students are also part of the research team that's cross-departmental. Some students do cross degrees. And mostly you'll find that the students are often the trigger of multidisciplinary research. And it's a student often bring a 3 professors from 3 different departments together to form a committee. So here I would say not only you can participate in that, you can actually shape this structure to the advantage that you like to do at MIT.
I think that last point's really important, that the student can cause this to happen. I give you an example of a recent graduate who was in the Department of Urban Studies and Planning in the PhD program. He was interested in cybersecurity. I agreed to be on his committee, but I needed a faculty member from computer science on the technical side of cybersecurity, and the other member was from the Sloan School on cybersecurity, and the 3 of us, and the work between the 3 of us has continued on long after that student graduated, did a postdoc at Stanford, and now is a professor at Hopkins. But the faculty is still working together because the student made that happen, just as Jim said.
That's called an interdisciplinary PhD, anyone's interested.
The percentage question, I don't know if we actually track it, but the percentage of people coming into the PhD program with just a bachelor's degree, I would suggest over a 10-year period might be 5%. But if someone thinks
Yeah,
that's
probably
wrong,
less.
less than 5%. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's rare.
Yeah.
There are no interviews in the decision-making process, no.
Transfer credits.
We don't take transfer credit in the PhD program. Sorry, Larry, if I cut you off. We don't take transfer credit in the PhD program. The only thing that we will accept, though, is if you've studied somewhere else that supports your first or second fields as in a class, you can list that on the classes that you've taken to support the first or second field.
You don't have to register for the student-led open house. And yes, practical experience is always valued.
Yeah.
I will say the more relevant the practical experience is to what you say you want to do, the more it will be valued. So just because someone has worked does not mean that helps us see how they are going to be able to do what they say they want to study at MIT in terms of how they're prepared, what they're going to understand about that area coming in with their background. So make the connections for us between the work experience and in your application and what you want to study. But once you do that, I would say it's very much valued. To the question of, oh, it's been a few years since I finished my undergraduate degree, is that going to hurt my application? If you've used that time in the interim to work on something and learn about something and build your capacity in an area, that's going to help your application.
On the Chen Cyrus Chu asked a question about the methodology, right? I would say DUSP is probably the most eclectic in terms of methodological mix. Larry and Joe, do you agree? You guys have more experience compared across department.
Yeah, Joe certainly knows areas of MIT because he came through the engineering school as a graduate student himself. And if you take the whole institute that we're connected to methodologically, the map is all inclusive of all methodologies. If you ask about the department or program groups in the department, let's say like the environmental policy and planning group, we put a heavy emphasis on people being able to analyze environmental problems and policy options. And you might use cost benefit analysis, you might use ecosystem services analysis, you might use carbon footprint analysis. There are lots of techniques people might use, but in terms of overall methodologically, a point that Amy made, we are very much participatory action research oriented. We very much imagine interacting with people in a place when we're working on something, and then engaging those people in deciding what to study, how to study it, and how to interpret the results. We call that participatory action research, PAR. And in the environmental policy group, I think while we all do a variety of things using a variety of methods, we very much would orient ourselves toward PAR.
I could add a few comments. The department, we have a large faculty, but we also have a faculty that come from very different disciplinary backgrounds. So I would echo what Larry said, that it isn't one methodology. There isn't a particular view of the city and how it should be governed and move forward. There's some noise someplace.
Yeah, somebody's got their
I will mute all, and then Joe, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah. So there isn't any one approach towards planning or design that goes with the department. There are people whose own backgrounds come from social scientists to engineers to qualitative, quantitative. Sometimes that's frustrating. That's also partly why we say you need sort of a strong sense of who you are, where you want to go, and how you're going to go about it. Because nobody's going to lay that out for you, and to some extent a little frustrating because you won't necessarily get all the faculty in the department that you talk to who will agree about the way in which you frame a problem and go about trying to address it. And that's something that we consider particularly realistic when it comes to something like urban planning. We're not teaching a methodology of planning cities. We're trying to look at urban economic areas and the communities and these the sort of life that they foster, and debate who should do what in order to make this better. And that's not there's no parochial sort of religion associated with the way in which the department deals with that. I would agree with what Larry said about sort of participatory research. And we had, he's passed away now, but Don Sean was on the faculty, he wrote this book, The Reflective Practitioner, trying to distinguish between the sort of theory and methodology that they think they espouse and the sort of theory you can deduce if you actually look at what they do and what it accomplishes. And that idea of, okay, you may have a great idea about what could work, but have you tried to connect it to a place that tries it out? What's actually going on in that place? And that sort of grounded in what's actually happening is something that comes because we're a urban studies and planning department with a professional degree in a school of architecture and planning that tends to be engineers as well as architects who try and do and build things, as opposed to being in a sort of isolated tower in a science school or some other type of arrangements that tend to drive the philosophy behind which the faculty sort of operate in the department.
Great, thank you, Joe. I think we're reaching the time, and Gabriella typed the Zoom information in the chat again, so please do copy it out. Make sure if you to join. Otherwise, thank you very much to join us, and look forward to read your application. Thanks. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.